Hey there, how's it going? Welcome to my review of the ISLESWITCH hybrid kayak slash stand-up paddleboard. I was able to use it while I was down here in Florida, staying at this marina in a little floating tiny home. It's been a wonderful trip, but the best part of the trip, quite frankly, was the ISLESWITCH. Although the winds were a little high to use it some of the days, the two trips that I took it out created the best memories. So the first trip I had it out on the upper Manatee River. You know, while I didn't catch a lot of the fish I was expecting to catch, I did hook into a monster snook, and I never would have been in that location had it not been for the switch. And then the next day I took it down to Naples, Florida, into the canal system, and I got the peacock bass, right? It just, that was a bucket list fish. And again, it would not have been possible if I didn't have such a light and portable way to access the water. So let's talk about some of the features that I absolutely loved about it. One is it's light and portable. It all fits into a carrying bag. It weighs, the paddleboard itself weighs 19 pounds. The entire kit probably weighs about 30 maybe max, with the seat and the footrest and everything. And there's the carrying bag all loaded up and ready to go. So it's about the size of a large suitcase. Got some nice little pockets. It's got some extra straps where you can tie stuff down if you need to, but you know, everything fits in the bag real nice, and you could throw that on a plane. You know, check it, obviously. Nice handles, everything's padded. It's just so well thought out. And speaking of well thought out, look at this. You can basically carry this on your back as a backpack. And it's got padding for where it rests against you, and nice straps too. So, you know, if you needed to carry it a little distance from your car to the beach or to the river, you can carry it right there in that pack and then just strap the pack down on the back bungee cords. And even if it's not taking it there, it just makes it easier to carry it into the airport, you know what I mean? Throw that thing on your back and then you can roll your other bag with you. So it is something that you could travel with. It's something you can easily throw into the back of the vehicle. I don't care what kind of car you have, as long as you have trunk space, you can fit this thing in there. So that is absolutely amazing. And when it comes to pumping it up and deflating it, the same pump does both. I think it took me like 4 or 5 minutes to pump it up, and that was like not going all out of, you know, because you know, there's no reason to be in that much of a rush, right? But deflating to get it back in the car, that seemed like it was about 2 minutes, a really fast process. Now, I didn't deflate it all the way down to like pack it back up into the box and all that stuff, and that takes a few more minutes to suck every little bit of air out of it. But just the fact that within a few minutes, you know, honestly, after I deflated it at the Naples trip, I sort of wondered if it was worth going through the hassle of throwing it up on the top of the Jeep and strapping it down and all that stuff, because quite honestly, it wasn't that much longer to just deflate it and throw it in. And so, you know, maybe you save a couple of minutes by car topping it. You know, if you don't have the space or you don't want to strap it down, it's so easy just to deflate it and make it really portable. So that's probably the next tip, is you really can car top this thing. I mean, it's easy to throw up there because it only weighs a little less than 20 pounds, but it does strap down well. You know, it's a really firm board. You would think inflatable, but this isn't like a raft, right? This is a high-tech, there's fish over there, sorry. So this is a high-tech piece of recreational equipment. Now, the Switch being the hybrid that you can use it as a kayak or a paddleboard, you know, it's not 100% angler focused, but I manage very well with it. What I found was the less gear I took, the more enjoyable the experience was, quite frankly. You know, I did tear up my thumb a little bit because I didn't have a net to land the peacock bass, but it was well worth it. So I do feel like on a paddleboard, a lot of times less is more, and so the more open you can keep the deck and all that, I think the better off it's going to be. The next thing about that paddleboard is the deck itself is like sea deck material. I mean, it's really soft and padded. It was really comfortable. It didn't get hot at all. You know, I was out in the sun. I actually burnt the tops of my feet. I was out on it so much. But you know, the sunburn was from the sun. The deck itself, even though it's like a darker blue color, like, it didn't warm up at all. And in fact, it's actually made me think about what colors I may want to put on my kayak when I actually put deck mat on it. I was thinking about going something lighter, but honestly, the darker, it didn't heat up in the Florida sun. It's not going to get hot in the Pennsylvania sun in the summer. The next one is the seat. The seat is really comfortable. Like, I actually sort of forgot that I was on this inflatable paddleboard, because the way the seat you can adjust it a little bit, but it just sort of like molds to you. And then plus you're sitting on a cushion of air, because the cushion itself just pumps up, and it pumps up in under a minute. Probably like four or five pumps is all it took to pump that thing up. So the pump is very efficient as well. I do want to mention that. But that seat was incredible. The footrest was nice. Actually, it's sort of weird. I found myself using, and this is probably just the way my feet felt, but I actually found myself using the straps on the side of the footrest to sort of brace my feet. That was the most comfortable for me for some weird reason. But then the second trip out, I didn't even use the footrest, and actually I sat cross-legged a little bit, and that way you can sort of lean forward, and I feel like it just gives you a little bit better angle, and you can sort of dig into the water just a little bit more in that forward leaning position. I also was up on my knees a couple times, and it was very stable. Now, I did not use it as a stand-up paddleboard. I was going to, and then the last trip where I was going to do that, ooh, big fish, mullet. There's a couple mullet right there. I'm going to have to go fishing here real soon. That was the unfortunate part. The last day where I was going to go out to a spring-fed river, we ended up not being able to do that trip just because it was so busy. There was no way we'd be able to do any decent filming. I will say this though, it's the most stable platform I've ever been on. So I spent a lot of time in canoes, and they rock all over the place. I have fishing kayaks, I have a Hobie, I've been in a couple others, and they are pretty stable. This paddleboard being 36 inches wide though, and just, you know, there's no rocker to it, it's just flat on the bottom. It is the most stable thing I've ever sat on. It was incredible. I never once, when I was leaning over and thinking about what I was going to do when I was landing fish, I never once felt like, ooh, I'm getting ready to tip. So as a paddleboard, 100%, it is extremely stable, and I wouldn't hesitate to use it whatsoever. You know, I've been on surfboards before, and this is so much more stable than a surfboard. Again, that was a little bit of a disappointment that I didn't get a chance to use it as a stand-up paddleboard, but because honestly, all the other places that I used it, you know, the water wasn't, I wouldn't call it unclean, but it wasn't the cleanest water, and there's a lot of alligators and stuff, and I just, whether you want to call it being scared or whether you want to call it being wise, I didn't feel like I wanted to take a plunge in waters where alligators were present. I just, call me crazy, right? But so I didn't do that. But I will tell you, again, it was 100% stable. I got a lot of comments and compliments on it when I was out on the water. A lot of people were interested in it. There were many people that couldn't believe that it was inflated. Like, they were like, really? Like, no kidding. And because when I was getting ready to go down to the Manatee, there was a guy saying, man, you're going to carry that thing down there. I'm like, it only weighs 19 pounds. He's like, you got to be kidding me. He'd just come up with a kayak that weighed like 60 pounds, you know, and he thought the paddleboard being big was just going to be a lot heavier. But fit and finish, the connections, everything, the bungees. So let me talk about the bungees. So the bungees at front and back, they're a lot like typical kayak setups. You can strap down your gear and all that. All of that worked perfect for me. It's a really well thought out system. I actually liked all the little loops along the side because I could hook in my rod leashes and anything else that I wanted to put a little carabiner hook through there. You could hook up just about anything. And I forgot to mention the paddles. They go together extremely well. They work nice and efficient. They're fairly lightweight, and the paddle handle is actually ovaled, so it's very comfortable. And they only go together one way, so you know that they'll go together in a way that gives you maximum efficiency. Even my wife, even though she wasn't on this trip with me, she's really interested in the paddleboard, to the point where she talked to one of her friends that runs a paddleboarding and canoe company. They're actually interested in checking it out for their company. So I think it's an amazing setup. You know, if you really want one just for fishing, because for skinny water fishing, I think these would be incredible. So you can go through like 8 to maybe 8 inches or less of water and get through there. But it's so lightweight. It's so stable. It's just absolutely incredible. If I owned one personally, I would definitely get a lot better at standing up on them and you know, fishing from a standing position. There were a few moments probably down in Naples that if I was standing, I might have had a little bit better opportunity to catch a couple more fish. So, you know, just having that ability to stand up would be fantastic. I can't say enough good things about the paddleboard itself. It wasn't like I treated it with kid gloves either. You know, I took it at the boat ramps, I took it down into the river, you know, I had it here on the dock. It is extremely well made. I can't stress. I wasn't sure what to think, to be honest with you, but as I started blowing it up and as I, you know, felt how firm that it really became, it's a serious piece of equipment. So if you're in the market for a paddleboard, I can't recommend the Isle Switch enough. If you really want a fishing one, they have the Sportsman as well. I'll have the links below down in the description. And I just, one last time, I want to thank Isle for the opportunity to use this paddleboard down here in Florida. They didn't pay me, they didn't see this review beforehand. I can say whatever I want. The one thing that I will say, it being so lightweight, it's a huge plus, but it creates a little bit of a challenge. You just have to you have to think about how you're dealing with wind, because as the wind did pick up, you know, it would move the paddleboard pretty easily. But what I found was if I headed into the wind, and also if I got out of the middle of the water in the canals and the rivers that I was in, you know, the wind just sort of like comes right down the center of the water. As I got off to the side, it became a little bit easier to sort of manage everything. If I would try to stop and fish and the wind was really whipping, I would get pushed wherever the wind wanted me to. If I was fishing downwind, it was no problem, because basically I didn't even have to paddle. It would just sort of push me down, and every once in a while I would just do a course adjustment. Can't recommend Isle products enough. They seem to be fantastic. I beat on them a little bit. They did just fine. Appreciate you watching. If you're in the market for a paddleboard, check one down there. If you use my link, helps me out a little bit too. Lets me do more videos like this. So thanks again, and I'll see you next time.